the summer of 1986, in the unincorporated stretch of West Texas desert, known only to maps and ghosts, a man named Emmett Calloway disappeared. He was 43, worked nights at an old relay station set up during the Cold War, and lived alone in a trailer parked beside the chain-link perimeter. The job was meaningless by then. The Soviets weren't listening, and neither were we, but the station still hummed with low frequencies. Kept alive by federal inertia and forgotten budgets, Emmett kept the lights on. He logged the uptime. He changed out vacuum tubes and swept the dust. Nothing more, until the night he heard the signal. It was a clear, windless evening. The stars, unbothered by city light, burned like they were watching. Emmett sat in his usual chair, a battered recliner with duct tape on the arm, sipping instant coffee and watching a green oscilloscope screen that hadn't twitched in months. Then it twitched, once, then again, then a long, slow crawl of waveform, not static, not a storm, not random. It pulsed, 13 short, 5 long, 13 short again. Emmett stared, recorded, replayed, measured. He followed protocol, such as it was. He filled out the incident sheet, stamped it with the call sign, and mailed it to an address in Maryland that probably hadn't seen mail in decades, but he kept the tape. He played it again the next night, and the next. Each time, the signal grew clearer, stronger. It came at the same time, 3:17 a.m., and lasted precisely 59 seconds. He began to dream, not of stars, not of planets, but of angles. Things that turned wrong, shapes that bent in ways they shouldn't. In one dream, he stood in the desert, and the moon unfolded into stairs. In another, his trailer was filled with voices, flat, overlapping, each syllable out of sync. He couldn't understand the words, but he felt them in his bones. He stopped sleeping, started writing, notes, drawings, maps of places that didn't exist, equations that bent in on themselves. His logbooks changed, pages filled with symbols that matched nothing on Earth or beyond. The local sheriff visited once, at the behest of a utility inspector who hadn't gotten a return call. He found the station empty. The equipment still ran, coffee on the burner, lights on. Emmett was gone. His trailer was sealed. Inside, the walls were covered in foil, the windows blocked with magnetic tape, and in the center of the floor, a spiral etched into the linoleum with what appeared to be fingernails. The spiral turned inward. No one cleaned the place. No one took over his shift. A month later, the entire station was scrubbed from the FCC's registry, but the signal remained. 3:17 a.m., West Texas time, 59 seconds, 13 short, 5 long, 13 short. It began to spread. Ham radio operators heard it first, then shortwave listeners across the globe, then people who shouldn't have been listening at all. A man in Sweden who hadn't owned a radio in 30 years heard it through his fillings. A woman in Caracas woke each night to the same dream, an eye blinking sideways, unblinking, in a sky made of water. A child in Tasmania drew a map no one could match to Earth, with a label scrawled in crayon beneath, return path. Governments listened, then denied, then went silent. A dozen relay stations shut down overnight. Funding retracted, frequencies blocked. Researchers vanished, but the signal kept coming. Each time it carried more, layers of sound, voices behind the code, flashes of static that resolved into something like speech, but never in a known language. Always the same rhythm. 13, 5, 13. People began to vanish. First the listeners, then the dreamers, then anyone who stood too close to certain parts of the Earth at certain times. The spiral appeared again, etched in fields, carved in stone, burned into walls. It grew. By the end of 1986, 7,000 people had disappeared across 5 continents. Most were written off, cold cases, accidents, but the patterns remained. Names that matched too closely, faces that blurred in photographs, dates that didn't stay still. In the places they vanished, electronics failed. Clocks froze, sound warped, the ground whispered, and above it all, in the dead hour of each night, the signal, 13, 5, 13, the call of something trying not to be found, but to be remembered. No one noticed when the second crater appeared. It opened 10 miles northeast of Red Creek, just past the ridge known to locals as the Broken Spine. Unlike the first one, this crater didn't boil or steam or tremble. It simply was a silent, perfect circle of ground that no longer belonged to Earth. It didn't reflect light properly. Rain pooled there but never sank. Trees leaned away from it without wind. The scientists who arrived called it a coincidence, except for the frequency, because exactly 27 minutes after the second crater formed, the signal resumed. Stronger, sharper, directed, not broadcast, targeted. The university equipment began to fail. Oscilloscopes locked in loops. Hard drives overwritten with glyphs no one could translate. One intern stared at a monitor for 6 straight hours without blinking. When pulled away, she wept and asked where the color blue had gone. Dr. Emery Calder was called in again. He had never fully recovered from the collapse of Site-Theta. Still walked with a limp. Still wore his wedding ring, despite everything. But he came because he understood what others didn't. This wasn't communication. It was instruction. The second signal didn't seek contact. It demanded architecture, coordinates, a restructuring of what no one could yet say. But the equipment that worked began to spit out sequences. Not binary, not DNA. Something older, denser. The team joked at first that the language resembled music, until it began to sound like a voice. It wasn't human, not synthetic, but the cadence, the rhythm, the structure. It spoke in crescendos and silences, in breathing. Something beneath the crater was speaking, and something beneath Red Creek was listening. Residents started reporting dreams that mirrored each other, shared landscapes, shared people they didn't know, but could describe in eerie detail. One man in a grocery store asked a stranger about the garden in her backyard, the garden she'd only ever seen in a dream. Sleep became fragile, waking became worse. Animals refused to go near the crater. Birds avoided the air above it. Fish in nearby streams swam in endless circles. Every magnetized object within a 3-mile radius began to fail. Compasses spun like roulette wheels. And then came the disappearance. 10 people, one night, all within a 2-block radius of the first crater. No struggle, no signs of forced entry. In one case, a dinner plate still warm. Their phones were left behind. Their clothes, everything except their shoes. All 10 pairs were found, placed neatly outside their doors. Calder reviewed surveillance footage from nearby buildings. 9 of the 10 apartments had no video. The 10th, the tape, dissolved after frame 666, literally dissolved. The magnetic strip peeled off like wet paper. It was then Calder proposed the theory he had kept hidden since Site-Theta. The signal wasn't extraterrestrial, it was subterrestrial, not from the stars, from below. He called it signal memory echo, the idea that Earth itself held an imprint of something older, something buried too deep to fossilize. Not an alien visitation, but an awakening, a remembering. The signal wasn't calling for us, it was calling us back. Something had been buried, and now it wanted to surface. Construction began, though no one admitted who ordered it. Strange machines appeared overnight, devices with no visible power source, crates marked only with long strings of numbers and letters, half equations, half prayers. They dug without plans, built without blueprints. No one could remember when it started, only that it couldn't be stopped. By midwinter, the signal was heard in every radio between Red Creek and the state border. Not music, not static, just humming. A voice caught mid-breath. Hospitals reported spikes in brain hemorrhages. Pets ran away and never returned. A teacher in the elementary school began speaking in palindromes and walked into the woods barefoot. They never found her. The second crater widened, but not physically, perceptually. People began to see it in dreams, then in reflections, then in photographs they didn't take. You'd be flipping through your gallery and find an image you didn't recognize. A crater, dark, perfect, and someone standing at its edge. Someone who looked like you, but was turned away. Calder stopped sleeping. He lived now in a trailer beside the site, surrounded by screens and wires and machines he no longer understood. The voice had grown louder, clearer. It didn't speak English, didn't speak at all, but it understood the mind. It pushed against the edge of cognition, burrowing into meaning before language could form. One night, Calder's nose began to bleed while typing. He wrote for 4 hours. When he woke, he didn't remember doing it. The document was exactly 6,666 words long, all of it in a script not yet deciphered. But when scanned, the shape of the characters formed a three-dimensional model, a face, not human, not even close, but familiar, like something seen too early in life to be recalled clearly, something glimpsed in the womb, maybe, or between the final blinks before death. They tried to destroy the document. The computer caught fire. The flames burned blue. The backup file duplicated itself across every connected device, then across disconnected ones, then onto printed pages. The fire didn't stop until Calder dropped the hard drive into the second crater. It disappeared. No splash, no sound, just gone. And the signal? It laughed. Not sound, not joy, just the perfect mathematical mimicry of laughter, like something practicing and getting better. By spring, the town had a new skyline, not taller, not brighter, but wrong. Angles that didn't obey geometry, shadows that fell in the opposite direction of the sun. Buildings that hadn't been there yesterday now existed, brick for brick, complete with address numbers and mailboxes. One had a blinking sign that read "Open," though no one ever saw what was inside. Calder's trailer was gone, not collapsed, not moved, gone. In its place was a round depression in the earth, exactly 27 feet wide, a circle of grass grown pale and thin, as if something had pressed down for weeks, then lifted without disturbing a single blade. The signal had stopped for exactly 1 day, and then it returned, stronger than ever. But now it pulsed, not a steady hum, not a constant tone. It surged in waves that matched no rhythm, no language, until someone realized it was matching sleep cycles. Every 90 minutes the signal peaked, and with each peak, more people began sleepwalking. Not just in Red Creek, the signal had reached beyond. Hundreds of cases across the state, people waking up miles from home, people digging in their gardens with bare hands. A teenager drove 3 hours in the middle of the night to a field she'd never seen, then simply stood in the center until sunrise. When questioned, she wept and said, "I heard it breathing." Hospitals filled with the sleepless. Nightmares worsened. Entire families reported the same dreams in perfect detail. A dark spiral, a tower with no doors, something vast and wet climbing up from underneath. Some people didn't wake up. They weren't in comas. They weren't brain dead, but their EEG patterns mirrored waking cognition, except inverted. When spoken to, their pupils dilated. When music played, their fingers twitched in time, but they didn't respond until the signal spoke again, through them, all of them, at once. Thousands of mouths moved in sync. Thousands of voices, identical and low, said one sentence: "We are the remembering." Then they all fell still, and one by one they began to hum. Calder's notes resurfaced in encrypted archives. His personal logs detailed the idea of deep cognitive seeding, the notion that ideas can be planted not in minds but in space-time itself, that Earth wasn't just remembering, it was rehearsing, repeating ancient blueprints until the hosts were ready. We weren't being invaded, we were being overwritten. The craters expanded, again, not physically, but perceptually. People started seeing them where they shouldn't be, reflections in puddles, glimpses in car windows, snapshots in dreams. A city worker in Oregon reported seeing the Red Creek crater in his soup. They fired him. Then he disappeared. More reports, more vanishings. Always the same signs. Shoes left behind. The smell of ozone. Static, forming words in no known tongue. And then the tower. It rose in the center of Red Creek. Not built, not constructed. One morning it simply was. 8 stories high. Smooth black surface. No windows. No doors, just a humming column of what looked like obsidian but couldn't be scratched. Light bent around it. People gathered, couldn't help it. Some wept, some prayed. A few screamed. One man tried to touch it and dissolved. Not burned, not broken, dissolved. His shadow lingered on the sidewalk for 3 days. Scientists arrived. Military followed. Then they left. Not evacuated, just left. No orders, no explanation. No memory of ever being there. Whatever the tower was, it had presence. It bent memory. It rethreaded causality. You couldn't take pictures of it. You couldn't draw it. Children asked why the adults kept pretending it wasn't there. The tower began to hum, the same frequency as the signal. Then, the signal changed. It stopped being sound. It became shape. Anyone within 5 miles of the tower began to dream in geometry, shapes too precise to be human, angles that couldn't exist. Some people awoke screaming, others didn't wake at all, and still the dream spread. Across states, across borders. Then, the markings appeared, first on buildings, then skin, circular glyphs, interlocking spirals. One woman found a symbol etched into her bathroom mirror that hadn't been there the night before, and she traced it with her finger and collapsed. When she woke, she spoke a language no one recognized, and then never spoke again. The glyphs pulsed, the tower pulsed, the craters sang, and the signal laughed, but not the same way, not mimicry. This time it knew how. Red Creek was sealed, officially quarantined. Environmental contamination was the story, but roads in and out began changing. GPS became useless. Planes rerouted themselves. Maps redrew. The town blurred, then faded, then vanished. Only one road remained, a footpath. Through it, people still walk. Not often, not planned. They just go. They bring no bags, leave no footprints. Their names disappear from databases. Loved ones forget their faces. But every so often someone sees them, standing at the crater, staring at the tower, humming. One day, the signal will stop, but only because there won't be anything left to receive it. Only memory, only shape, only the tower, only the signal beneath.